That's one of the most delightful, unanticipated experiences is when people are walking by, tourists or, random people who are maybe don't spend that much time downtown. They're going to the Tower or Ruth's Chris or something, and they walk by and they're like, what is this place? Are you for real right now? Like, can we get a tour? Can we take pictures? This is crazy. And it brings so much joy, right? Like, that's just so fun to see people. And I always think about, if I got the chance to tell like little 9-year-old me who was like, I'm going to be a vet, I'm going to do this. I'm like, dude, we own like the best, the fanciest pet hotel I've ever seen. She'd be like, what? Are you kidding me?
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 176. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. I'm 6.
I think you said 176.
176.
Yeah.
Today's guest, this dude that I know from the Garrison pub, Adam, it's probably been like 2 years, year and a half ago. He's like, you should have this person on. Okay, good. So to give you context on how this operates, I like write it down in this spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So I got this like rolling spreadsheet of like people. So anyway, sorry it took me so long to get to you, but
no, that's great.
Name and who you are.
My name is Hailey Seidel, and I'm a Calgary-based entrepreneur with about 20 years in the pet care space. And I've lived here since 2000, and I get to call Calgary my home now.
Amazing. This will be a cool one. I have like a very loose idea of what you do, but that's it. So this will be a cool one just to actually hear the story. The pet thing is really interesting to me. I've been a dog owner for a long time.
Yeah.
I have 2 right now.
Yeah.
Jody and I have 2 dogs right now. So it's like, it's an interesting world to me. So this will be a fun one.
Yeah, it will. And even though I love that we were able to connect a couple of years ago because like I said, when we met, I feel like I have got to know, like not just follow your podcast, but also kind of like when you get to see someone on the periphery and like see what you're doing on LinkedIn or see what you're doing on Instagram and hear how you're like engaging with people on the podcast, it gives you a little bit of insight in terms of like who someone is. And it was super exciting to kind of get to meet you today and like experience this. So super happy to be here. Where do I start? Where do you want me to start?
Well, you've seen these, so it's like go back as far as you want to go. So where you grew up, how you grew up, parents, siblings, jobs, school. Oh man,
we're going back to the beginning.
And then we'll just kind of get to where you are.
Yeah,
so take
absolutely.
As far as you want to go.
All right. Well, I was actually born in Hobbs, New Mexico. So I'm an American, actually. So I'm still just a permanent resident here in Calgary. I grew up the daughter of a drilling engineer. So my dad when I was born, he worked for Amoco Oil. And every 5 years, I was almost like a army brat. We moved every 5 years. So Calgary's now the longest I've lived anywhere. So like I said, so I moved here in 2000. So from New Mexico, we moved to Texas, and then we went to Colorado, New Mexico, and then up here when I was in high school. I was in grade 10 when I moved here, and that was a huge shift. It's
gotta be horrible.
Oh man, you talk about like my kids are just entering, the teenage years or whatever, and I think for me personally, that was like a big shift. Growing up, I was always an animal fiend, but a huge dog fanatic. So, growing up, always thought I was going to be a vet. But that was really all that was accessible to me or visible from a career path if I really wanted to like work with dogs. So, all through elementary school, anytime there was like a career day or you had to write some essay or do something about like what you wanted to do when you grew up, it was always going to be a vet. And before we moved here, we lived in Farmington, New Mexico, and there was like an amazing family that lived down the street from us, and both the parents were vets, and they were like just the most amazing, kind, charismatic family, had some wonderful kids that I grew up babysitting. They had like the town's only vet clinic at the time kind of thing. And so got to spend a lot of time like growing up and babysitting their kids and around them and stuff. And they provided this really great like idea of kind of who I was hoping to grow up to be. And then I remember being in high school here, and high school was hard for me. Like I was always, I think, a smart and charismatic kid. Like I definitely made my way through high school, but academically, I had strong subjects, and then there were some that just proved to be incredibly challenging for me. And so that was pretty much the status quo for like a majority of my high school experience. And now looking back, like as an adult, diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago, I'm like, oh, you know, like when you start to kind of like put the puzzle pieces together. But I remember like getting called out into the hallway because I would go get signed up for like, I'd sign up for like AP classes, you know, like these like top level classes or whatever. And I remember a science teacher calling me out, and she into the hallway like a week or two into the semester, and she's like, I don't think you're supposed to be in this class. And I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to be in here either. She's like, how did you get in? I was like, I don't know. I just signed up for it. And they like, nobody asked. Like, I'm in it. And she's like, I mean, we're two weeks in. Like, I don't know what we're gonna do. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Are you gonna like move me down? And she's like, no, like you're just gonna have to work really hard. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And so, you know, it became about like, who can I partner with on group projects? And like, if I can do the presentation part, you know, or if I can like help with the concept and the design and like all that part, like someone else can kind of do the actual science part. And I remember being in like my last year of high school and thinking to myself, like, I'm gonna go to vet school. That's what I'm gonna do. And I was lucky enough to have a cousin who was about 10 or 15 years older than me in New Mexico. And she had just finished vet school. And my mom was like, she knew that I was really committed to like kind of going down this path. Yep. And at that time, they were kind of trying to figure out where I was going to go to school. They were really advocating for me to return to the US to go to college. And, but I still had this chip on my shoulder. Like, no, you guys moved me up here, you know, away from all my friends and family, and you're moving me around. And I just got settled here. And, you know, I had made all these like really great friends all through high school here and had a really great high school experience. Yep. And I was like, I'm going to stay here, you know? And of course I had like met the wrong guy at the wrong bar and like just thought I was going to settle down and like all the things, right? So I was like fully committed to not buying in on what my parents were selling. Like I wasn't having it. And so the whole thing about vet school is you got to do an undergrad and, you know, like, and then you go do vet school after. And there, at the time, Calgary didn't have a veterinary college at the time at the U of C or anything like that. So my parents were like, well, even if you really want to do that, you should really probably go to the States. Because at the time, I think it was like U of S. That was it that you could do in Canada. And so she's like, but I really think you should call your cousin Emily and you should get her on the phone and you should chat with her and like talk to her about the pros and cons of like going to vet school and stuff. And that was the first time that I kind of had a little bit of like an adult conversation with someone who was like, okay, you can do it, but you got to have a thick skin because it's not just like taking care of animals. A lot of it is financial decisions that owners are having to make. And keep in mind, this was already like 25 years ago. Yep. And she's like, it can be really hard because you're going to go to school, you're going to have student debt because you just went to school, you're going to get out and you're going to have to work for pennies for someone else for a little while. And a lot of the decisions are, you know, people have to make really hard decisions on the worst days of their pets' lives that are financially motivated. You don't really get to do the cool stuff that you see on like those vet shows on Animal Planet. That's not everybody's day-to-day experience as a vet. And it's, you really have to love the science of it because everything else kind of sucks. You know, like she was just kind of like, that's kind of the reality of it. And then if you want to open your own clinic, you're going to have to go into even more debt, right? And so I was kind of like, oh, well, the science part of it is not the draw for me, right? Like, and so at that point, I kind of actually just like dropped it and was like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to find something else. And it doesn't really matter yet because I still have to do my undergrad. So like after lots of like conversation with my parents, my middle sister was still finishing high school. So my family was still around. And I convinced my parents to let me start at U of C. So much to their chagrin, I started at the U of C. And because we were American, my parents still had to pay like international tuition. So I remember my parents being like, it would be so much cheaper if you would just go down to like our state school where we went, you know, all these things, like just go down there, it'll be great. I was like, no, I'm not moving back. I never want to go back, all this stuff. So went to the U of C.
Before you go there.
Yeah.
Where'd the like love for animals come from at a young age? What was it? Were you exposed to something? Did you have an experience? Like what was it that took you there so young?
I mean, we had a childhood dog growing up, this mini schnauzer named BB King that would like sing anytime anybody sang, like, and so I think probably when you move as much as we do, having like a really close relationship with like a family dog that's going around with you everywhere, right? Like that's your number one friend everywhere you go. That, and I don't know, it's just always been this like innate obsession. Like, now I get to like work with people who are like as obsessed with dogs as I am. Mm-hmm. And we always all joke. We're like, did you have the same encyclopedia of dog that you wore out and you had your favorite pages and like the book would just open to the page of the breeds that you loved, stuff like that. And, I remember around the time that like 101 Dalmatians, I think it was like the Glenn Close one came out, and I was obsessed, and I was dying, asking my parents to get me a Dalmatian. And I was like, maybe if I'm just so good and I do all these things, I'll finally get one. It was when we lived in Denver, and we had this like big family meeting, and my parents were like, okay, we have like a surprise. We're going to tell you guys something. I was like, this is it. I'm getting my dog. This is it. And then they told us that they were having my youngest sister. And I like burst into tears crying and like ran away from the table. Like they were like, we're having a baby. And I was like, no, you're supposed to be getting me a dog. Where's my Dalmatian? This is the worst. And like, don't worry, she knows that story. But like, it was like, I think there's a photo my dad took where we're like sitting around the kitchen table where they like told us, and my little sister is like smiling and I'm like red in the face from like crying that it wasn't a puppy. And I don't know. I think we just like, we grew up spending a lot of time outside. We had like BB, and he was a great dog. And then when we moved back to Farmington, my parents relented and let me get a lab. So I had a yellow lab named Buddy, and Buddy was like Old Yeller to a T, or like that Marley and Me movie. He was just like a giant yellow lab. So he was huge. I mean, I was a little kid, but he was huge, and he was bad. And he was just, like, my parents were like, if you're not going to walk him, we're going to find him a new home and all, like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we'd be out walking him, and he would drag us for half, and then he'd give up and stop walking and just lay down. And then we'd have to leave him. And then he'd like wander back dragging a leash, or people would call my parents being like, we saw the dog. Did he get out? And we're like, no, he just stopped walking. And I knew my parents would be freaked out if like we didn't come home. But the amount of time we spent like walking him with friends, and we kind of lived a little bit rurally in New Mexico before I moved here. So yeah, the amount of time I spent like walking him and chasing him down to the river and trying to get him back and all this stuff. And then my parents got a little Jack Russell. And so the two of them were like this little Bonnie and Clyde tag team. So he knew how to open the gate. And then the Jack Russell was like, okay, follow me. And the two of them, yeah, exactly. So I've just never known life really without a dog. I just experienced my first little hiatus last year. So I've literally always had a dog. And so when I lost my last two senior pets, my two senior dogs, one after the other within like a 6-month period. Mm-hmm. So one was 16 and one was 14. And it was weird because I was like, this is really strange. Mm-hmm. And we still had two cats in the house. So it was kind of like, it was just a really weird change to the day-to-day routine. Mm-hmm. I think. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have this moment of like, man, dogs are like really ingrained in kind of like me getting up and moving about the world every day, and how I connect with people through the animals kind of thing. And so having that little hiatus was a bit strange, but
what do you think it was? What do you think it was as a youngster, like that connection thing? Like not everyone
has it at all. Yeah.
No. Yeah. It's kind of like,
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that for some people too, I think that, for me, it's dogs, but for other people, it's music, and for other people, it's art. Yeah. And not everybody's lucky enough to get to turn their passion into the career. And I do sometimes think that just because you love something, like there's definitely been points in my life, for example, where I've been grateful I had older dogs because they didn't need that much of me at that time, because the dogs I was taking care of as a career all day long were exhausting, or that kind of thing. And so there is kind of that double-edged sword where when you're doing something that you love, sometimes it can change the way you look at it, right? And sometimes I'm like, am I doing this wrong? Because I do see some people out there in my industry that are like dog fanatics through and through, where sometimes this sounds weird, and I thought about it a lot during COVID, for example, when everyone and their mom was getting a dog, you know what I mean? And I thought a lot about it in terms of, I love dogs because I can be quiet, I can be me, I can just show up and they're happy you're there. It's just that like unconditional sense of like excitement and I also just so appreciate them for who they are too. And sometimes I think there's a motivation for people to get the dog, and because it fills something in, like fills a gap for them.
Yeah.
And I just think I like maybe look at the relationship with not just me and dogs, but people and dogs is a little bit different. And sometimes I'm like, but the dog has needs too. You know what I mean? And they're like this living being thing that sometimes their needs, intrinsic needs, sometimes get people miss it a little bit. You know, it's like, no, they really need to get out for that exercise. Or they really need that fresh air. And it's guided a lot of the ways that I've like shaped my businesses in terms of like what the dog needs first over sometimes what clients think or want for their pet. And, you know, and so for me, I'm like, no, that fresh air every day, the dog's got to get out. Like there's no way I would ever have like a fully indoor facility where dogs never went out for walks or, you know, something like that. And to me, like going for a walk is better than just being let out in a yard where a million dogs peed today, you know, or something like that. So I just know exactly what I'd want for my dogs. And I've tried to create that into like a care plan that I'm confident gives the dog what it wants and needs every day. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is really. I think it's just everybody has their little niche thing that they that they love and provides them joy. And it's funny, like now that I have 2 kids, like one of them, I don't know how it happened, but my oldest daughter is like a cat fanatic. And I was kind of like, this is so strange. Like, you know, I remember her being a toddler at the airport and someone was like, how many dogs do you have at home? We were traveling with her and a dog. And she's like, I have 4 dogs. And someone's like, 4 dogs? And she's like, yeah, but I don't have any cats. Like, you know, she always had to have this caveat. Like, I have no cats.
So hard done by.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, COVID came and we finally got her cats. But yeah. And then my younger daughter has the same, I think. She likes all animals, but I think really dogs are her jam. So
when you have that chat with that family friend, and the kind of vet thing doesn't get crushed, like that might be an overstatement, but that moment, like when it changes, did you have an idea what you're going to do, or were you just going to go to school and just like start?
I had no clue, but I also kind of acknowledged that it didn't really matter right then. And I think that that's something I really impress upon young people now that I meet through either like work or family friends, where I'm like, hey, you don't have to know right now. You can have an idea, but there are so many paths to get to where you're going. And I just feel like maybe when I started school, there was still that generation of like, you're going to stay in whatever you do for your entire 35, 40 year working career. And so now I'm like, no, I hardly know any adults that still live that way, you know, like who go in and still work for the same employer or still have the same job that they went in and started their career with. And so now it's really about like, what's going to be the most transferable or, you know, like, and kind of get you got to keep a roof over your head and put food on the table, but find something that you don't hate, that you like want and love to do. So at the time, I kind of at least had the awareness that I needed to do something that was going to get me that undergrad and I'd figure it out. So I started at the U of C and my academic challenges kind of followed me there, like was really strong in some stuff and just not so strong in the maths and sciences. And so at the time I was like, well, maybe I'll get an MBA. Maybe that's what I'll do. Or I at least need to get these marks to get into the science program if I do want to end up pursuing vet medicine for a second degree. But all through my first and second year, man, like stats, like any of the like prerequisite math stuff was just a struggle bus. And now in hindsight, sometimes I want to like go back and just take that class as like an adult student just to see if the outcome would be any different.
Do you think it would be?
I don't know. I tried. It wasn't for lack of trying. And like I spent so much time in that like prof's office. I did all the tutoring. I just think that now I know I'm also, it's okay to not be good at all things. And sometimes too, that whole experience of university was especially frustrating for me because obviously now seeing where where my career has gone, sometimes I'm like, man, that MBA really would have come in handy for me and would have saved me lots of money, lots of trouble. You know, like I probably would have been a better leader, a better boss. I would have had a better understanding of finances compared to the person who works at the banks and works with templates all day, you know, or just kind of has to follow like a date, like a, I don't know, copycat day kind of thing. And so I won't say that like that whole experience didn't give me a bit of like a chip on my shoulder. And I still kind of have it sometimes when kids are like, oh, like I got to go to college right away. And I'm like, I get it, but I'm kind of curious to see if that starts to change in the next decade as we start to continue seeing trade schools or like, you know, for me, employing lots of young people over the last decade, sometimes the grads that are coming out of Mount Royal and have a much better relationship with their professors. They seem to have a much better handle on what they're going to do when they get out. Like they just seem to be more advocated for and like supported through the educational process versus like the huge seminar, old school style universities. Like I didn't really have any relationships with any of my professors beyond here's my mark, or like, and maybe that was me, I don't know. But so kind of like wasn't that engaged with my whole like college existence, I guess. And I ended up, so I couldn't get into the business program because my math marks weren't like over, I don't know, like in the 70s or something. And you needed to have like in the 85s or 90s because of the amount of applicants that there were. So I really couldn't get into the program that I wanted to. And so when I graduated with the BA, I ended up pursuing international relations. So I had done a term abroad. I went overseas for 6 months to Spain, and I did a really fun semester abroad, and that was great. And then I came home and I was like, well, maybe I'll be an interpreter. Like I love history and I love politics and I love all this stuff. So maybe I'll be an interpreter. And I think I literally thought that I was going to be like Catherine Zeta-Jones in like some movie where I just was going to show up one day and start like interpreting for high profile conversations. And then I started looking online for jobs.
Postings.
Yes. And I got a job for like $15 an hour as a collections agent for a mascot making company to Mexico. Like I needed to call these Mexican companies and tell them to pay. And I was like, this is the worst. I'm like, what am I doing? How did I get here? Right. And so that job lasted like a hot second. I knew right away that wasn't it. But and there was a little bit, I feel like my parents were like, yeah, we told you so. Like, what are you doing? Like if you'd only gone to school down there, like it would be so different.
All the answers.
Yeah. And by that time they had moved back down to the States. So I was kind of here like alone. And so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, but in any job, I had this Great Dane. So for my 18th birthday, my mom had got me this Great Dane that I'd always wanted. And I was just talking with a friend this weekend who was like, she got you that to try to get you to like stay with the family, right? Like, but Bruce was my very first like personal dog. So he was this Great Dane that I had always wanted. Like I said, growing up, the family of veterinarians, they had a Great Dane. And I just was like in love with them after that whole experience. And so my mom got me Bruce for my 18th birthday. And so Bruce and I were here in Calgary and I needed to find someone to take care of him if I was going to be working like an 8-hour day because he had been used to my student schedule. So I'd go to classes, come home and walk him, go back to school, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I like couldn't really find anyone or the people and he wasn't the best dog. And so when I was interviewing people, I was like kind of a little sketched out because he was huge. Yep. And I was like, I got to know that like I can trust you to not like, he's big. He has the potential to like hurt someone or something or whatever. And so when I was out like interviewing people, I just couldn't find anyone. And all through college, because I had, I was on a visa, I think at the time. I don't think I had become a permanent resident yet. Like I couldn't really get a job. So all I ever did was house sit for people or babysit for people all through high school, kind of doing like random cash jobs and stuff. And so through like family, friends, and the community, I had already a significant amount of relationships built around, being a trusted person that could go stay in people's places and take care of their dogs and stuff like that. So I kind of was like one night at home and I like pulled out an Excel spreadsheet. Oh, I remember after I quit the collection agent job.
Sounds horrible.
I took Bruce to the park and I saw one of the dog walkers that I had like interviewed and she like opened the van and like let 10 dogs out of it. And I was like, what in the fresh hell is going on? And then I kind of was like counting the dogs and I was like, how much did she say she was going to charge me? I was like, oh, okay. Like
the numbers.
Yeah. I was kind of doing the numbers a little bit. And I was like, even if I did like, like 5 dogs twice a day, like that's more than I'm making at this stupid job that I hate.
Were you stressed out during this time when you're trying to figure things out? Like when the school thing's not working, like just, was it hanging over you? Like did you feel the pressure or were you just willing to be just like moving through this?
It's funny because I haven't actually thought that much about that. But I suppose maybe the pressure was my parents going, it's time for you to move back. Like, give up on this whole Calgary thing. Like, you need to just move back with us and be closer to friends and family. And like, okay, you gave it your shot. We paid for your college up there. Like, give it up. let's go, come down. And so I was kind of like, no, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get a good job. Because my parents were like, hey, we're going to like you got to start figuring something out here, cutie. Like, this isn't just you're on our dime forever. And so I remember being like, I'm going to start a dog walking company. And my dad was like, what? Like, you're going to do what?
Like left field.
Yeah. Because I was like, no, hear me out. And so, and literally at the time there was no one. So nobody had a website. This was about like 2006 or 7.
Okay.
And I was like, I made a little website in the basement, and I like a Yahoo website, and nobody had snatched Calgary Dog Walkers yet, which was the name of my first company. And I didn't really intend for it to be what it was, but it was perfect because it's kind of like you see these guys who own like ABC, like
for the
dryer
pages?
repair. Yeah, exactly. So like anytime someone looked for like
literally.
a dog walker in Calgary, like we popped up. And so it literally went bananas. Like back then, I think I listed on Kijiji. I had this website. I like did all the little pet expos and nobody was out there kind of doing it on a professional basis. It was just a lot of like, here, the girl down the street, or I know a lady, here's her number, that kind of thing. And so started a website, business took off within 6 months. Like, I think I had like 20, 25 dogs a day, and it was like growing way too fast. But I remember like maybe the first month, or like maybe I had a client that bought like their first big package or something, or I invoiced them and it was like $900. And I was like, oh my gosh, or maybe they boarded and walked. And I remember calling my dad and I was so excited. And I was like, Dad, like I made $900. And I remember him being like, doing what? Like, I think he was doing something at work. I probably called him in a meeting. He's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I made $900. This one client paid me $900. And he's like, but like for what? A month's worth of work? He's like, Hailey, that's not a lot of money. Like you gotta figure this out. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, and I was just like, oh, he doesn't get it. Like that was one client. What if like this many clients paid me, that much or something? And so I wouldn't say that they necessarily were like not supportive. I think they were just like, yeah, okay, this is just another one of her like things. And it didn't exist. Like nobody was doing it.
Which isn't that weird to say that? In today's world, right?
Yeah.
Like it just speaks to the timing of it all.
Oh, 100%. But like nobody was really doing it. He'd never seen the dog walker in the park. I think they would have never hired a dog walker. Like my parents wouldn't have. And so when it's not a service that you necessarily need, like you're kind of like, what are you talking about? And like, what did we send you to school for? You're crazy.
Did you have the like to put up a website, to go like hustle at all the like little trade shows, to kind of do it? Did you just have it? Did you just figure that out? Like to make those moves without that kind of background? Like,
I guess so. I think like at the time too, maybe it was like a reflection of my personal interest too. Like I was a dog nerd. So I had gone to those things and I was like, I know where I can find clients, and now in hindsight, it's funny because we get asked to do a lot of stuff with like the Petropolitan now. And sometimes I'm like, my clients are not there. Sometimes at those festivals and like it was what I needed to do to start. Yep. But what you did that first year of experience, you learn and grow from there. And so you don't necessarily replicate it, right? Like at year 20 or whatever. And so sometimes those things can be really fun because I want to go and it's almost like, oh, what's our intention? It's actually to engage with potential employees down the road, right? I want to go engage with high school students who want to see this as a viable career path, who may not be aware of it, versus trying to find clients. Maybe the parents will want to be clients, but my target demographic doesn't necessarily spend that much time going to like pet expos and stuff like that. It's kind of lots of people going to like look for free engagements and interactions and stuff, or bring the whole family down. And so
did it feel natural? Like when you started like coming up with numbers or packages and like invoicing and like.
No, I messed up so much. Like, no, you just figure it out. But that's the thing about entrepreneurship is it's like, okay, yeah, I love dogs and I think I'm going to do this thing and I just need to make enough money that my parents will lay off and stop telling me to move home. But also like, you end up learning all of these ancillary like skills and things that you need to do where you're like, I don't know how to pay taxes. I'm like 19. What do you mean? Like, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I certainly didn't know how to employ anybody. I didn't know how to manage anybody. I didn't, you literally just figured it out by school hard knocks, right? And that's where I'm like, man, like going to school for this would have been really helpful if I had known how to do it. But you just trip and fall and you get up and you dust off your knees and you kind of keep going. So what happened, that was about 2007, 2008. And it just continued to grow. It went crazy. And so I had like 4 or 5 employees, and we were doing pet sitting, and I was kind of like sitting. All of our dog walking clients wanted us to watch their dogs when they went on holiday. Yep. So then I was taking them home and doing it from home, and I never got a break. It was like 24/7. And so I was like, this isn't sustainable. Either I have to like stop or I have to grow. Like, it's just too stressful. And it was a hard decision to kind of be faced with, because I was making pretty good money, and it was like a cash-based business, right? But I was like burning out. It was already a few years in, like 3 or 4 years in. And at the time, I was with the father of my kids, and he was a chemical engineer in the oil and gas sector. And he was kind of offered the opportunity to move over to do a stint overseas. So I was like, okay, like we kind of have to pick one. Like, are we going to go do that? But then like we're a real thing, you know, like if we make that move, or you decline it and like we kind of stay here and I do this. Yep. And so it's funny thinking back, like, what if I'd done that? Like, what would my whole life and career and all that, like, would I even be doing what I'm doing, you know? Or would I have just shuttered it and gone over there? And so ended up staying. And that was when I was like, I think I need a facility. Like, I need to start looking for something. And so went out and called a commercial leasing agent. And again, I had no idea. I was 25. And I was like, I just have a bunch of money. I can put down a down payment and a security deposit or whatever. But like, I just want, you know, a few thousand square feet. And then we were going to see stuff, and the leasing agent was like, I wanted something central, I think. Like, now thinking back, I can't even remember. I think we told him what we kind of needed, and we knew what kind of zoning we needed. And then he's like, hear me out. And it's funny, he showed us this one location that is a dog daycare now. Like a decade later, someone turned it into a dog daycare or something like that. And so we were looking at this place, and I was just like, I don't know. It's like underground, and it used like, we're going to have to do all this remediation because it used to be like an auto body shop or something. And he's like, okay, come look at this place. It's way bigger than you guys want. It's like way bigger. But for rent, like when you talk about the square footage, like I think you should look at this and see what you can do with it. And so we showed us this, my very first facilities location. So it's still like up and running today. So it was Bodog Canine Specialists. And so he was like, come check this place out. It was like 20,000 square feet indoor, Jesus. Like 15,000 square feet outdoor.
Massive.
Too big. Massive. It was a Titanic. It was huge. And so we get there, and we're kind of like, I think we can make it work, even with just cash flow from the dog walking business. Like, should we do it? And it was just like, yeah, this is the most centrally located. Nobody was near there. So, and when I say we, I mean like the kid's dad was kind of like, yeah, do it. Like, try it out. Right. Yep. So I jumped in with both feet. And the thing was, like, I signed the lease, and I knew I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. I knew it. And I was like, I'm not going to take a pregnancy test until like after this lease is signed. That'll be a later problem. So I signed the lease, and then,
were you nervous when you signed it? Like, did you trust it, or was it like this spot where you're like, fuck, this is,
I think it, like, what is it? Like, youthful.
I was just going to say, like, just young
enough. I had
enough
no idea what I was doing. I had no idea.
Isn't that weird to say, though? Like, to say it and then know where you are right now.
I don't think I understood, like, the risk. Like, because even now, you know what I don't think I got it. Because kind of I was like, well, I have cash, but it's not like they're going to, like, take a house from. I was 25. I was like, what are they going to do? You know, I don't think I really understood like the personal guarantee thing. I made so many mistakes at that point of my life, starting that business. Like, and when I say starting that business, I already had this really great cash based business with the dog walking. But when you go sign a lease, and it's a whole other ball game, really, because, you know, you got to guarantee it. There's skin in the game. Like, you know, there's maintenance, there's your op costs, all those types of things. I really just I didn't know what I was doing. And so I did learn, you know, like through a lot of falling down, getting up, dusting off your knees. Like, now in hindsight, I'm like, why didn't I sublease half that space for the first 5 years? That was so stupid, you know, like, because I remember it being, well, when you're first starting, right? It was a huge facility that was empty for the first little bit by comparison of like how much space we were taking up or needed. But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of just not knowing what I was doing. The layout wasn't ideal. And I could have made so many changes that like I would never now, like I would never do that again. But you got to learn, and you think you know everything. And
what allowed you to do that? Like, it's a big risk, but is it just like the naivety of just being a youngster and I'm just doing this? Like,
I think so. And also just thinking like, I'm going to bring this thing to market and nobody else is doing it. So, yeah. So I think a big part of it for me was like, well, I already have this client base and people love this dog walking service, but and they already trusted me as like a, pet care professional taking care of the dogs from this home-based environment. But I think something that I really underestimated was this shift to providing care in a facility environment. And like, I still see it today in today's market where you have a lot of people who are like, I would never board my pet. And it's like, well, it's not really boarding your pet. It's, or maybe that's a dated idea of what it is based on like how we grew up. Cause I remember taking our family dog BB like to the local grooming place where everybody was like chain smoking with like, hey, how's it going? Like, what's your dog's name? And I would call on family vacation and be like, how's he doing? And they're like, what's your dog's name?
Who?
And you're like, they don't even know who he is. And he was stressed out and like was, had lost his voice by the time we got there. And who knows, like it was, I was just always like stressed out about that. But now it's, like the industry has just changed so much, and I can see the merits. There's certainly animals that do much better in a home-based environment, but some people, it's like they want that peace of mind that someone's going to be there showing up, that there's eyes on the dog all the time, that there's that 24-hour care, that kind of stuff. And so, it's been interesting to see the shift. And, like when I opened the facility, I wasn't really thinking about like, oh, there's going to be some people that like really want that or don't want that, or what kind of people are drawn to this type of a brand. And learned a lot about, when you open a place like that, you're like, I'll take them all. And then you're quickly like, never mind. We don't want them all. We just want,
Psych.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's definitely some dogs that are a challenge to care for and we're not able to support here. But you only learn that because you mess up and you take the wrong ones a couple times. Right. And so, I mean, like I said, I made a lot of mistakes then, but looking back, I am so grateful I made those mistakes early in my career. One of the biggest mistakes I made was I remember when I was like, okay, well, we can't call this huge building Calgary Dog Walkers. Like, what are we going to call this? And so I had to go and set up a new business when we were getting ready to sign this lease. And I was like, I want something that speaks to Calgary, and like, my favorite thing to do is like have my dogs down by the river and spending time outside. And so I was like, I want something that's like river or mountains or whatever. Then back again, I was like 25, right? I was like, I want people to think all these things. And so we went with Bow Dog, and then my logo was my big Great Dane, and I painted the building the same color as him and all this stuff. And so, like my own dogs were a huge motivation, and like, the branding and what I was doing and what worked for them. And then I trotted myself over to the registry and was like, I need to incorporate a company. And, they're just like, pay here, sign here, do that. Here's your minute book. And at the time, back to my parents being down in the States, when it came time to sign the lease, I had this little stack of cash, but they were like, you're 25, you have nothing to secure this. We need some capital. And so I like looked at, my boyfriend at the time, and I was like, so like, you're an engineer and you're 10 years older than me. Do you want to like co-sign my stuff? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I can. Like, it'll be fine. And I mean, I was young. He was young too. Like, he had no idea. And so co-signed my loans, and I was like, I'll give you 50% of my shares. Like, cause we're going to be together forever. Jesus. This is amazing. I just you have no idea. I had no idea. So,
but it was working.
It was working. Everything's working when you have like, when things are good. Do you know what I mean? Like, and now it's always one of those like, oh, that's great. It's great that things are good. And that's where anytime I'm speaking to some, like a young person who's new to or anybody who's like new to entrepreneurship, I'm like, I know it seems like an expense you shouldn't have to pay for right now because you guys are getting along really good. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're married to your partner or brother and sister or parent, like you're doing it with your dad or whatever, like, you have to make sure that things are accounted for when things are good, because when they're bad, it's even more difficult, right? And so the business operated really well for a while, like I'd say 7-8 years, but I I had 2 girls back to back. And my personal relationship really started to deteriorate and had become really unhealthy. And in about 2014, my partner was one of the first layoffs of like the first like oil crash kind of thing. And so he was like one of the first people or like companies that was really affected when that first happened in the spring. And then there was the summer. So he had a severance and he's like, well, let's take this and I'll come back in the fall and get a job. And like things were already not great for us personally. And, so we kind of tried to salvage things and like spend some time together in the summer. And then we came back in the fall and he was like, yeah, that was when there were more layoffs and things just weren't really rebounding. And he was like, maybe I'll help you at the business. And I was like, like, I think I'm good, but I was like trying to repair this personal relationship and stuff. And I was like, okay, like maybe there's room for help or whatever. And anyway, all of that continued to kind of slide and got worse. And that started like the beginning of the end. That was like the personal relationship. But back to that 50% share, that was my personal family's like only source of income at the time because he wasn't working. And so I had this business that was performing really well. It was a healthy business. But then as we started to like decline, right, then it just becomes like antagonism at home, antagonism. Like it's not like you have an escape where it's like, oh, I can go to work and just do this, or I have this, he has that. Like we'll do this. And so the business became our largest asset. So you hear about people like separating, and they're like, who gets the house, or who gets the cars or something. And so we had this business that we both like co-owned, and it became just this mountain that I had to kind of climb because not only was this business like my identity kind of, right? It was the only way I could put food on the table with my kids, but it also became this huge liability in terms of like the outcome of this like personal separation. So we went through a ton of mediation, years of legal stuff, and went into a final mediation where I was expecting to say, here, like, let's settle, child spousal and like, and the business, like, let's just do a big settlement. You go do your thing, go get your job in oil and gas, and I'll keep the company, and like, we'll part ways. And he kind of came in and was like, I'm going to buy it. And I was like, what? And like, I looked at my accountant and my lawyer who were in the mediation, and I was like, not at all prepared for that. Cause it was my thing. Right. He's like, no, I'm going to buy it. And I was like, what? And that was not at all what we were prepared for. And then the lawyer was kind of like kicking me under the table and like, just shut up for a second. And, I was like, okay. And so we asked for like, whatever, went into our own room, and she was like, if he can pay what he's willing to pay, take it. Don't say anything. They didn't ask you for a non-compete. Take the money and let's see if they can close it, and let's see what happens. They're like, that's not what we were prepared to like offer. So if they're willing to, let's go. And I was like, it was almost like getting punched in the stomach kind of, because I was like, what? Like, this is this thing I literally built with my hands. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I was not at all prepared for that to go that direction. And so it goes back to like everything happening for a reason, right? And anyway, that's how the cards fell. And I ended up leaving that day being like, I think I just sold my business. Like, that was really weird. And in that moment, I remember feeling like so alone. Like there was nobody I could talk to, because it's not like I had a business partner. Yep. It was like the ending of like a personal relationship too. And of course it took like months to, finally close the sale of the business and all that kind of stuff. Like it's not clean, and all this stuff takes so much time. That's why like, having gone through that young, like having gone through not just the sale of a business, but also the decline of like a long-term personal relationship. Yep. So I was probably like 28. And so through my 30s, right, like being like single, or you meet people and they're going through separations, and people are always like, oh, like, do they have their stuff together, or something. And I'm like, people, that's just like a reflection of lack of life experience, because like, it's not, nothing is ever fast or tidy or like, you know what I mean? And it's like, you can be like the most stuff together person, but getting that together takes time, and you're kidding yourself if you're like, I've got all my stuff together. Like if someone's like, yeah, I got a house and a car, I'm like, what about that implies that you have your stuff together? That is so ridiculous. Like, And so it's funny. I feel like sometimes it's a stigma that I've had as like a single mom or someone that's gone through a separation where it's like, yeah, well, just like wait till you get your stuff together. Right. And so after that, like closed, after the sale closed, I took a kind of a year off. But as that closed, I had already, I had a really good family friend who was a CPA for a property management company downtown, and they were opening the Edison.
Oh, yeah.
And so they really wanted it to be a pet-friendly office tower that was attractive to companies coming out of Silicon Valley that wanted to relocate to Calgary and wanted to have pet-friendly office space. And so at the time, that was like a big thing that, new to the market. Nobody in Calgary was really doing that. And so she was like, I think they want to open a dog daycare and run it themselves. But I've known you long enough to know that that's just not like, oh, yeah, anyone can do it. So she's like, why don't you, I told them to at least consult with you and kind of see like if you can help them out. And so I went and chatted with them, and they were thinking they were going to do it on their own. And they, they were like, maybe we'll do it on the third floor. I was like, what? No, like, you want all these dogs in your elevators every day? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So we kind of chatted, and then they were quickly like, okay, never mind. Do you want to do it? Do you want to just run this for us? And like, you can run it at the time, I still had the company, and I wasn't really I thought I was going to retain it. So I was really trying to be like pretty, like, keep it close to the vest that I was going through this personal separation and stuff, because I didn't know how this was going to go literally until the day that it happened. Right. And I didn't want to blow these opportunities that were coming my way, but also having gone through, like, knowing that my personal relationship was declining, I like didn't want to talk about any of these opportunities that were coming to me, because I also didn't want people to think I didn't have my stuff together. Right. So I'm just, like showing up, acting like everything's normal and
good.
Everything's fine. And so anyway, the, Bodog, the sale ended up closing, and I went and met with them downtown, and they were like, okay, well, like, yeah, why don't you do it? It'll also make us feel a little better because you'll be a sure thing because you already have this other business. So I was like, yeah, like, absolutely. And at the time, that we were talking about it, I did still. And I thought that was going to be how it went. But I actually said to them, I said, but I don't want it to be the same brand. I don't even think that's going to work here because if we're doing downtown, I want it to be upscale. Like, you want it to be really fun and really niche. And what I was doing there with that brand, I felt like I had already kind of like, I don't want to say outgrown it, but I realized the mistakes I made even in the marketing and branding.
Yep.
Not the mistakes, sorry, that's the wrong word, but like it was too hyper local, right? Like, it wasn't something that I was like, it's not a name that I can just move to another market and people see it and understand what it is, right? And so I was already like, nope, that brand's not going to work downtown. We got to do something else. And so they were a little bit reluctant when we were initially talking. And then they found out that I was going through the separation. And so, it's almost one of those things, like in my lifetime, getting that phone call from the landlord where I was like a personal phone call, right? Like, well, I heard you're going through a separation, and like, are you really going to be able to make this work? And, you hear about those like milestone phone calls from people, like women especially, where it's like, like, can you really do this? Or, we're banking on the backing and the like reputation of your last business. And I just remember like kind of being alone in my car, but like the color coming out of my face and like the wind going out of my sails and being like, oh, this is it. Like, I'm going to lose out on this because of this. And I was like, nope, I'm really confident that, it's all going to go great. And but then I had to justify myself and be like, I have a non-compete. It's going to be great. Like, I have no doubt that this is going to work. It's going to be fantastic. And they kind of, I guess, took a gamble. But, in hindsight, sometimes I'm like, would a man have received that phone call? And maybe part of it was my age too. Now I can kind of see like, they wanted to make sure that the brand was going to work, and that even though because of the location, it's not like any of those clients from that location were ever going to necessarily need the day-to-day services that I offer downtown. So it's not like there was like a ton of, I wouldn't have really been pulling from that client base anyway. I just suppose the marketing and like brand awareness would have been good. But anyway, got the opportunity to completely start fresh downtown with like a whole new branding concept. And, never really had to deviate from like this career that I'd kind of built by accident, and from scratch. But, the amazing thing with how it's worked out, back to like, wanting to be a vet and my cousin saying, you're spending the worst days of the the pet's life with these clients most of the time. Like nobody wants to be at the vet. You know, you're spending money that you're like, oh God, do they need the vaccines? Do they need this? Or you're trying to troubleshoot an issue that they're having, a health issue, to like manifesting this career that I get to spend the dog's best days with them. Like we literally get to share, whether it's dog walking or at dog daycare or, you know, like boarding, whatever we're doing, we get to share their best days with them when they're vibrant and healthy and having a blast and well socialized. So like there's literally no better job than gearing up and going out in your hiking gear and taking dogs out. Like my favorite days are some of the bad weather days because it's just me and the dogs out there. And it always cracks me up because now we're coming to the tail end of the first generation where when I started my career, people had their first dogs, right? So now I have clients with their second and third dogs kind of thing. But sometimes I would see those first dogs and like I'd bump into them, or now I see them with my kids might be the same age as theirs or something. And I would see their dog and their dog would see me and be like, hey, like that person's here for me. Like, you know, and the dog would like not understand why I wasn't like taking him outside to go for a walk or something. And that goes back to just that like connection or like bond that you have with them. And there's, you know, it's always exciting when you see a friend, you know, anywhere when you go out. But when someone's like dog sees you and the dog's like, yeah, that's my girl. Her. Yeah, exactly. She's my friend, not your guy's friend. And so, you know, that's like been a really neat connection and relationship to get to have with people here in town too, where like, I've known them for like 15, 20 years, you know?
Long time.
Yeah.
What's the new business called?
The Petropolitan.
The new one.
Yeah.
That's
the new baby.
That's the one you popped
She's
up.
6 years old.
How did you do it? Like, did you just like trust your gut? You talked to somebody? Did you just know that you had a bunch of experiences behind you that could give you information that you could like, I'm like fairly confident this can work? Like,
I think I had 2 little kids. Like, you know, it's like someone's got to pay the bills, you know, like, and at the time in that year that I took off, so like obviously I sold my half of the business, right? So I had some money from that. And then I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like what if that falls through for some reason? Like I need to make sure that I have some type of skill that's marketable. And, you know, I had a friend that gave me some marketing work. And so that was kind of fun and got to try something else and working for someone else, which was like hard, but I was like, I know I can do that. So if all else fails, like if this does not work, I have tools in the toolbox that will allow me to provide for me and the girls. Right. So, I think that, you know, when I had Bodog, I, participated in lots of different, like, business coaching type programs and some that were like hyper specific to my industry. And so I had the opportunity to travel around for some conferences, and every time I would go to a different place, I would go tour facilities. And so sometimes it's like, how many facilities can you see? And sometimes it's not necessarily the layout, but it might be like how they're operating. And you look at somewhere like Manhattan, for example, and I had a really great colleague, Tanya, who operated a pet care facility in downtown Manhattan, like blocks from Central Park. Wow. And so I had seen it. And at the time, you know, compared to my original 20,000 square foot facility, I hadn't even thought about this potential. Like I'd seen that a couple years before, you know, the sale of my first business. And so when they started talking to me about downtown, you know, I reached out to my friend Elise in Seattle, who was running dog daycares on Amazon campuses. And I had reached out to, or I knew I had seen Tanya's place in Manhattan. And so I knew like small inner city was working in other markets. And then I really started to kind of think about, you know, going back to me as a little kid playing My Little Pet Shop and, you know, being obsessed with dogs and all these things. I was like, what do I want out of a brand? Like, you know, how do I want people to feel when they see it? And learning all the things that I took away from all these courses and, you know, niche industry consulting things that I'd done over the years, and kind of really tried to think about what an opportunity we had in the inner city market. And that's really where I had to lean into cultivating that relationship with the landlord, because I was like, I could do daycare, but really what I want to do is also be able to have an upscale pet hotel. Because not only is my revenue going to be limited, but the marketability of it is only a dog daycare. Not everybody needs dog daycare. I knew that we'd be able to have a grooming salon there, but being able to have that overnight accommodation was huge. And it really took the gracious support of the landlord as well, who was like, nope, we get it. We can see it for this to be like viable and worth the investment for you down here. The downside tremendously in Calgary is that you have to apply for a huge land use redesignation. So because of me taking this space, the Calgary Tower, whole area is like now designated for pet care use. So it's kind of funny, like this historic building, right? And that was one of the fun things was during COVID when everything was closed, I called the Calgary Tower and I was like, crazy question. Can I bring a bunch of dogs up there? Like, can I take dogs up the tower? Like, can we start doing field trips? And I want to bring some dogs up there. And they were like, I mean, I don't see why not. Like, nope, we can't bring any people up here, but you guys are already in your little like cell of cloistered people and dog, like who cares? So we got to take dogs upstairs and they were the first dogs that had ever gone up in the Calgary Tower. And they're like, yeah, the only animals that I've ever been up here are like service dogs. But I guess every year during Stampede, they take a horse up the elevator.
As soon as you said it, I was like, I feel like there's been like a...
Yeah, so that was fun. Had dogs ripping around that like glass floor and some of them were like, and then others had like zero sense of, they were totally fine. But it's been a trip. Like it's been really fun kind of completely reimagining this brand and just thinking about things that would make like little me super happy. And, I have found that you can't underestimate how much a great or a beautiful facility like sells itself because that was one of the challenges I had with the first business was like when you go into an old giant warehouse, you can't make it look like it's not an old giant warehouse. It just is what it is. And so we were really combating almost too much space or, trying to make it work for the use. Whereas with this location, I really had the opportunity to completely build it out in a way that it's right downtown between the Palliser Hotel, the Fairmont Palliser, and the Calgary Tower.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the right-hand side of the road there. So across from the Germain. So, what's beautiful about it is we're like right on kind of like Hotel
it's like
Alley.
In the heart of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, we have to make sure that we match their level. Like we want to be just like the Fairmont or we want people to walk by and have that same feeling of like, oh my gosh. And that's one of the most delightful, like, unanticipated experiences is when people are walking by, tourists or, random people who are, maybe don't spend that much time downtown. They're going to the Tower or Ruth's Chris or something. And they walk by and they're like, what is this place? Are you for real right now? Like, can we get a tour? Can we take pictures? This is crazy. And it brings so much joy, right? Like that's just so fun to see people fangirl like the same way I would have if, and I always think about, if I got the chance to tell like little 9-year-old me who was like, I'm going to be a vet. I'm going to do this. I'm like, dude, we own like the best, the fanciest pet hotel I've ever seen. She'd be like, what? Are you kidding me?
Like to dream about that or even to come up with that concept? It's like it's obscure in Calgary specifically. Yeah. I don't know if Western Canada or Canada, if it's the best of the best.
They don't have, like, there's really nothing like it. And I mean.
Do you trust it? Do you just trust your like intuition that.
What do I want? I think that's, I have a unique, I realize this. So in pet care, the thing that really I find frustrating as like a female entrepreneur in the space for the last like 20 years is often the top performing facilities are often male owned and female managed. So, you look in the States or the broader market, that kind of thing. Like, I mean, the pet industry is a $250 billion industry and it's just growing all of the time. Yep. And like Jeff Probst, like the guy that did Survivor and Fear Factor and all that stuff. He had this like book. I was just talking about this randomly with someone the other day. It came up, but he had this like goofy book that came out like probably a decade ago. And I didn't even read it, but I heard it on an interview or something. And he was like, with those shows, someone was like, how did you come up with these shows? This was like the first reality TV. Yep. He's like, I just kind of was looking for the gaps. He's like, I already saw what people were like watching with Real Housewives or whatever. I don't know which one preceded the other, but like, he's like, I just have always been about trying to identify the gap and like what weren't people doing or talking about in whatever I was interested in. So he was like interested in game shows. And he's like, what aren't we doing in game shows, right? And so I was like, where's the gap in pet care? And in pet care, a lot of it looks and sounds the same, right? Yep. Like it all looks like preschool. Yep. It's like these gross primary colors. Sorry, like if that's your jam, like that's okay. But like it's like that's I could not be more averse to it, where they all smell and they're like, we take care of dogs. It's okay. It's just going to smell. And so for me, I'm like, no, if it smells, that means there's been urine penetration somewhere. Like I need this. I want to make sure it's non-porous. I want to make sure I can disinfect it. Like I'm a clean freak. If, I had this Great Dane and I knew that he needed a larger accommodation, and I knew that he was happiest on a large bed. I knew he was old, so I couldn't leave him at home for very long. So I wanted to make sure that he could have 24-hour support of a staff member that could keep an eye on him and take him out if he needed to go, right? So I just kind of started to think about all the things that I wanted to do. And I was like, what colors do I love? You know what? I love pink, and I love purple, and I love pastel blue, and I love pretty things. And then I started to look around and go like, I kind of like Wes Anderson. Like I kind of like these bougie vibes. And, you look at the architecture that we had in the space, and I hired a local designer, Sarah Ward, and I was like, this is the vibe. This is what I want to do. And we went through lots of, I went through lots of reiterations of like the branding concept with some companies I hired to help me with that. And I still have fond memories. And sometimes I don't know how much my kids remember, but I took my daughters with me to those meetings. And it's hilarious because it's all they've ever known, right? Yeah. And I remember them sitting in on these meetings. There's 3 adults sitting on the other side of the table, and me and my 2 kids. And then one on the end of the table, like, they were like, can I get anybody a water? And my youngest is like, yes, please. I'd like a water. I'm okay. Boss. Yeah. And then I remember they were like showing us this stuff, and they had created, and one of them I'd worked with before on another project, and they showed us something, and it was like literally pieces of like my old project kind of. And I looked at my daughter, and she's like, that's from that other project. And they were kind of like, and I was like, she's not wrong. Yeah, like that. We've seen that was from my last thing or something. And they were like mortified. And, it's just funny that they've been in it so long that it's been a really fun thing about being like a mom and having them along for the process. Because it's not just about taking care of dogs. It's about like build out and changes or like challenges with timelines and, managing people and having to like, now they're old enough that they can stay home alone and stuff. But I remember back then it was like, all right, guys, let's go. Like we got to take a dog to the vet. Like it's 10 o'clock at night. Just go in your jammies. Like, come on, throw your Crocs on. Let's go.
Which those stories are interesting because a lot of people don't think about that, right?
No, yeah.
If they think about you owning the thing, looks fancy, is fancy, but that.
Oh, yeah.
Like shuttling your kids
or like
to go
spraying shit off the sidewalk, like whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
I remember there was a day like not that long ago, the staff like love these, and I'm never shy about sharing them with them because I'm like, I was outside one day and I was like annoyed, right? Because there was like pee on the concrete or something outside. So I go in and I get a bucket and I had to scrub brush or something. And here I am out there like scrubbing this thing because they were busy with clients, like whatever. And somebody walks out and they're like, whatever it is they're paying you isn't enough or something, like some lady makes a comment. And I was like, okay, thanks. I'll be sure to tell him, or something like that. Or lots of like, when I signed the lease on Bodog, I was 25. By the time I sold it, I was like 28, 29. So when I opened downtown, I was like 30, 31. So
young.
Young, which I don't think I would always have. I was like, I'm not that young. Like, and people are like, no, you don't get it. You
family
it's
business
young.
owner, but like,
yeah. Young. Or the other, I remember when I first opened the Petropolitan, there was a couple staying next door at the Palliser, and they walked by and they were like, we had no idea this was here. And it was when I first opened, and I was like, oh, come on in. And she's like, I'm here with him for a work trip, but I own a pet care place in New York or something. So she came in and she was like, oh, this is so amazing. We were just chatting, like kind of talking shop. And she's like, so who are your partners? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, who like invested with you? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, like who are you doing this with? I'm just me. And she's like, just you? And I'm like, yeah, like there's nobody else here, man. Like, what do you mean? And so it kind of goes back to like, it's funny because I feel often people underestimate not just the pet care industry, like is one. Like it kind of sounds like, I play with crayons all day or something, right? And then the other part of it is, I think, this just happened to me recently. It had been a little while, but I was at the hockey arena with one of my kids, and I was talking to a guy, and he had just sold a really specialty, like niche machining business or something, and we were talking about it, and he had no idea what I did, right? But I was asking him some like questions about the sale or what he was going to do now or who bought it or something. And then he was like, I'm like, what is it that you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm in pet care. And sometimes I don't really know how to like what to say, right? But I'm not going to be like, I own the nicest pet care facility in North America or whatever. But he's like, and what is it that you do? I was like, oh, I do pet care. And he's like, pet care? Like pet sitting? And I was like, yeah, that's like one of the things. I was like, I do dog walking and I do everything. And I was like, I focus in like, I'm in the luxury space. I could do luxury pet care. And he's like, oh, like, have you seen that place on 9th Ave? Like that one right by the Palliser? And I was like, yeah, that's my business. He's like, that's your business? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, what vibe was I giving off that maybe you thought I was like some home, like, you know, like that I was still at the beginning. Yeah. Or like still at the beginning of my career or something. And so he was like, oh, that's awesome. Or like the number of people who like I'll meet and they'll be like, oh, I didn't know that was yours. I thought you own, you know. And so sometimes I'm like, thanks, I think. I don't know. Like it's kind of like weird that way, but maybe I'm also like fairly, I don't know, unassuming, I think. But I do think a lot of people maybe see it from the outside and they're like, oh, there's more to this or there's more people behind it, which like I said, I think it's a compliment, but I think it also speaks to still present biases on like, you know, women in business or surely you couldn't do that by yourself or, you know, like that type of stuff. And, you know, undoubtedly I would have been able to do it while still owning, if I still own the other business, it might just look different, but it just goes back to like, was that what I wanted that day that we were sitting in that mediation room, you know, like selling that business? No, I did not think that was the way that it was going to happen. And so I feel like my whole life has been like one of those choose your own adventure books that you were reading when you were a kid. And sometimes it wasn't necessarily a choice, like, but it led me down a path that got me to where I am. Right. So it's like, wrong guy, got me the right kids, you know, it took me like, you know, we didn't go abroad, but we stayed here and we like started this business and then sold that one and it took me over here. And now it's kind of like, okay, well, like now what, you know, like.
So now what? Exactly that. Are you just open to different opportunities that present themselves? Do you trust your gut? Does it always go back to what you want, what you're interested in? Like, how do you make the decisions for what's next?
That's a hard one because my kids would tell you that I need to have less ideas, right? Or like, you know, I'll be like, guys, we had both washers and dryers at both facilities like broke a month ago. Like it was one of those like Murphy's Law. Of course you're both going to break in the same week. Yeah, or something like that. And so of course for us to get new ones delivered and the old ones taken, it's going to like, it's going to take 5 days. Okay, well we got laundry we have to do, right? So I was like, I'll start going to the laundromat. I sit in the laundromat. I'm like, same thing. I'm like, how many machines are in here, man? This place is like busy all day long. How much am I paying for a load? Like, you know, I'm kind of like watching and I come home that day and I tell my kid, I'm like, you know what? I think you guys should open when you're older. They're like, what now? Like, tell us what you think we should do now. But I do think now that like once you do, sometimes I'm definitely like, there's easier things I could be doing. Like taking care of animals is like taking care of invalid children. You know, like they can't tell us what's wrong. They can't talk. They can't tell us what they need. And so there is a certain amount of like specialty, like training, you know, personal interest. And like you have to hire people that you trust to take care of these living, breathing things. And I'm really fortunate to have an amazing team. And now I've been doing this long enough that we're able to hire a lot based on parameters I've been able to identify in our very favorite employees over the years, right? So that people who don't have the amount of experience I have can identify them. And that's a huge part of like the success of both companies and creating relationships that have lasted well beyond the length of someone's employment with one of my teams, right? But I also just think seeing, like being able to see a business that's like, I can see that I think now maybe personal interest, but also I have like an appreciation for businesses that operate like well and efficiently and profitably. Those things just like interest me. And my industry is very high labor, right? And so sometimes like being interested in like what else is out there, now that I have been able to kind of like sharpen that saw a little bit. I was really looking at the dog bar. Like that was a direction I was going to go. And I had a lease sign and we were ready to go. But unfortunately, the property owner didn't want to do the upgrades that were required for occupancy. So that project ended up going a different direction, which sometimes I'm like, maybe that was the universe just being like, hey, I can see what's coming in the economy, or, like I can see how this lease relationship's going to work out for you. And so that felt a little bit like karma kind of stepping in and going like, let's see what money you can get back out of this and maybe hit pause. So maybe that's a pause. Maybe that's a pop-up concept. Maybe that's a concept I sell. I don't know. But I do see a continued gap in the like luxury pet care space.
Yeah.
You know, just like in hospitality, you've got, you know, the Comfort Inn, and you've got, you know, the Embassy Suites, and then you've got the Palliser, and you've got the Ritz, and you've got these like the Four Seasons. And so I do think that people who enjoy those experiences, and you know, we're seeing trends in people not having kids, but they're having pets, and they still want to ensure that their pets are well cared for and having experiences that are on par with those that they enjoy. So kind of continuing down that route as much as I can within my capacity, and maybe looking for what's next that way. Like, I think that there's a growth opportunity for me there personally or professionally to kind of, okay, so I have this great idea and I really know how to do the pet care piece, but like, how now do I grow, or does it grow, or what happens next? And whether or not that's like learning how to engage with like private equity or venture capital or what, we'll see. But day to day, I mean, I've got these two fantastic kids who, the older they get, the busier they are. And so that is, I'd say that's my part-time job. Maybe that's my full-time job. The pet is my part-time job. And right now I'm mom Uber. I drive everywhere. We have a group chat that's called Mom Talking to Herself, because it's just me saying like, make sure you're ready for this.
I'll be there at 10.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody ever answers me back. So, yeah, exactly. I'm like, I hope you got there. I don't know. Like,
when you think about where you're at right now, do you just like trust it? Do you feel like this is just like do you ever get complacent, or are you always like looking forward and always trying to innovate, or always trying to like not rest on what you have?
I think it's interesting. And I also don't know if it's age related. I think that there's like, I've been thinking about this a lot, just like personally, where I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, is this boring?
When you grow up?
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, is this boring? I've said to the team, like our leadership team a lot, I'm like, we're kind of in flat road territory right now, which is like fine. But to get, you know, to the fun spot, sometimes you got to drive through the prairie for a little bit. And there's not a lot to do. But holding myself accountable to getting some of that stuff done is the stuff that's really going to make that, like, those growth opportunities when they happen so much easier. And so now it's a lot of like looking at processes, what's breaking down, how can we ensure, you know, like that it doesn't again, what kind of processes do we have in place? How can we train people more efficiently? And so just looking at like it, I love the creation part and the project and identifying that and stuff. But at the same time, given my experience, and I'm like, I'm able to look at something in this flat road place and say, oh, I can already see what that problem is going to be because I had a problem with XYZ before. So sometimes I'm able to delegate or hand out, you know, like projects. We're able to, you know, start some stuff and maybe people get it going, but then I'm able to kind of say like, oh, but we got to make sure this or XYZ. And then there's stuff that I'm really lucky to have some fantastic people working within my organizations that have skills that far exceed what I'm able to do because now like, it's getting old sucks. Like I'm finally at the stage where I'm like, I can't print, you know, like how nothing works. And they're kind of like annoyed with me or laughing at, and they're like, yes, it works. Like you just, why don't you delete some stuff off your phone, or like, what is going on? You know? So having people that know how to use like our operating softwares better than me and things like that, I'm like, you can't leave me. Like I need you guys to help me with this stuff. But the stuff I enjoy the most is like, you know, the marketing and the project creation and that kind of stuff. But the stuff that makes me be able to enjoy it is getting that like flat road work done that really benefits, you know, the team long-term, the client long-term, the brand long-term, things like that. So, but I do think, and it's been great to have the support of the team around me, because sometimes they're like, yeah, but you know what, there's only so many hours in a day and you've got these kids and you got to take a break sometimes and that kind of stuff. So sometimes focusing on like doing a great job on the tasks of today versus like trying to force through the next project or launch something new is really what I'm trying to kind of, it's good enough. That's good. Like I can focus on that.
It's an interesting, like, I don't want to say balance, but like being in a comfortable spot doing it and being okay with not like pushing or looking for the next thing.
It's hard. It's hard, and it makes me feel like I'm missing something. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a weird feeling. And then now more than anything, especially after having gone through some of that like early adversity and the early in my career. You know, like I said, there's a lot of stuff I'm really grateful for. And like one of them was having gone through that. And now, for example, like when the oil market changed in 2014 and, you know, the Calgary economy really took a turn, I didn't respond like quickly enough then. I think, you know, I kind of thought it was going to rebound in the fall. And so that led for some like real sharp turns. Like I had to make some real big changes in the fall of that year because I think I, you know, stayed overstaffed too long, thought we were going to see numbers that we didn't, things like that. And so then when COVID happened, literally that week I was like, oh, like I need to pull all these levers and like see what we need to do. And that was, I feel like those are two of the experiences like in my 20 years of being self-employed where it's like, you start to get a little entrepreneurial PTSD. And so sometimes you're kind of like waiting for the next shoe to drop, right? Yeah. And this has been a weird year, like since January, right? It's been up and down and all over the place. And a lot of it is like, I think people just watching the economy and waiting to see and seeing how the Calgary market's impacted again. And we're a little bit more diversified, but I don't know, like people aren't traveling the way that they have in the past. We had a really strong year coming out of COVID when everybody could travel again. Yeah. And then since then, it's just kind of been all over the place. So we'll see what, you know, and also, you know, for us being downtown, when we opened, everyone was in the office like Monday to Friday. And so we've seen it ebb and flow. Like now at our downtown location, you know, we're slammed Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but Monday and Friday people are working from home. And so you go talk to the guy that owns the falafel shop, you know, and they're just as impacted as well. Right. Yeah. And so it's funny because, you know, I'm someone who works well from home and stuff like that, but you definitely see the impact on like the local economy in terms of like shifting some of that like day-to-day business out of the core or keeping people home. And then it's just, it'll be interesting to see where things go the rest of this year.
You said something a couple times, being an entrepreneur for 20 years. When you say it out loud, is it like...
Feels fake.
Yeah, I was just like, where does it land with you? Like when you say it, where you are,
where you came from? You called me out on
on
saying it a few times. I just feel like though too...
Proud?
Maybe proud. But I think the thing maybe I'm most proud of is like I think I made reference to it where you don't want to be, I see a lot of people like this where I've been able to identify it, where it's someone who has 1 year of experience that they've repeated 20 times. Yep. Whereas, like I said, I think back, like this has been like a fun jog down memory lane because sometimes as an entrepreneur, once you're through that, you're like, shut the door. I don't ever want to think you're on to the next fire. Right. Yeah. And I'm lucky to be at a point in my career where there aren't a lot of fires anymore. And a lot of those fires were started because of lack of inexperience. And I just didn't know what I was doing, you know? But you think back and you're just like, wow, that was crazy or something. You know, I talked to a colleague and someone will be like, do you remember that time you did X, Y, Z? And I'm like, oh man, I blocked that out. I forgot about that, you know, or that you had to go through something. But some of the tremendous value in having faced some of that adversity early in the career is that, you know, if I have to speak to like, whether personally or professionally, right? Yeah. Like if we have to deal with an awful client, you know, if there's like a awful person or they're abusive to a staff member or something, right? I'm not afraid of that. Or now I have the confidence to go in and say like, I am confident that I've made what I have work. So I'm not at a point anymore where I have that insecurity of going into like, let's say a lease negotiation, or I want to go see a facility. I'm like, or a bank or whatever. And I'm like, explain this to me like I'm a kindergartner. I just want to ensure that I totally understand all the fine print and that I am fully in a position where like I leave here knowing that I fully understand where we're at or where we're leaving this conversation. 'Cause I find sometimes people like don't want to be thought to be the stupidest person in the room. And I'm like, I am 100% confident in like asking those questions because I'd rather ask them now than in a month be like, what do you mean? You know, or whatever. So I think that that's something that I'm proud of. And I've really tried to demonstrate in front of my kids too, of just like, just ask the question. Like, I don't care what these people think, you know, like think of me or whatever. Just, you got to make sure that you're like, that I'm protecting me, that I'm protecting them. And, or, you know, I even say that to the team where I'm like, you and I, this is like Petropolitan is the Kardashians, right? Like, and you're her, makeup stylist, and I'm her, manager or whatever. And so we are both here working for her, and whatever is best for her is what is best. Like, it's not about what's best for me. It's not about what's best for you. It's about what's best for the company. So sometimes I find like, it went from me having this like career dedicated to like pet care and me spending every day with pets. And like now a majority of my days are not necessarily hands-on with the animals anymore, but a huge sense of my purpose, I think now has been about creating this industry or this like opportunity within our city for people that were like me as a kid who really wanted to work with animals. And this is a career path now, right? Like it wasn't, like I said, this doesn't even exist when I was a kid. And so now being able to provide a viable like entry-level job or career for kids who love animals, or it's like, yeah, if you want to go down this path, there's tons of room in the market out there, and at least come here, let me show you how to do it really well. And for some of the fantastic team members that we have, a lot of them are like in school at Mount Royal or at U of C, and they're like, I've got to do a project. Can you be my like, can you do this thing with me? Pig. Yeah. Or like I'm in a marketing class and I have to do a thing. And so the amount of times we've been like the guinea pig for all these students, and our clients are so great. They let us like spam out, like here's all this kid's doing a project. Can you answer these questions for their school thing? And it's been really great. But I think that's one of the things that's the most amazing, is just allowing those kids to come in. And I say kids, but like, I mean, we have some fantastic people just like working for us. And for some of them, it's a stepping stone career. That it's really fun now to get emails from people being like, man, that was my favorite job. That was so much fun. That's I had such a blast. Or they make lifelong friendships. And those are the things that when you start those businesses, you don't think about, right? Like you even said, like even being here is because you have a relationship with the people you used to work with, right? And those are the things that when you like are starting these projects, you're not thinking about. And then you step back and you realize you're like, oh man, that person was so stoked, like seeing that this existed and was so excited about it. Or this was one of their favorite employment experiences, or they met their best friend here, or they adopted their dog because we were fostering it here, things like that. And you kind of don't anticipate when you like go into business that those are the type of like, I wouldn't even say little impacts, because to some people they're huge things, right? Yeah. Some animals, they're big things. So those are I think the things that like bring me the most like joy or pride, I think, when you stop and think about what you've created. Yeah,
like 20 years worth of things.
Yeah, it's wild. Or you see a name pop up, on something, and you're like, oh, how do I know that person? And you're like, oh yeah, I took care of their dog a million years ago, or something like that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I mean, I grew up moving like every 5 years. And so now having lived here for 25, it's always funny because when we're traveling or something, people are like, where are you from? And for a while it was always like, I don't know. I mean, I live in Calgary now, but I wouldn't really know where to tell you where I'm like from. But now I say I'm from Calgary. My kids were born here, and I feel like it's becoming more and more that there's people that are like from here. I remember when I moved here and everyone's like, no one's from Calgary. Everyone's an implant, But I love this city. I think it's fantastic. And for a while I felt like, I chose it. I didn't want to go back like home to the US, but I really wanted to stay. And I feel like it's just such, I used to kind of feel a little bit like, now that I had the kids here, I was like, it's the best place to be stuck. And, I don't necessarily feel like that anymore, but I feel like if you're going to have to be somewhere where I have to live life here while I'm raising my kids, it's like, there's nowhere else I would rather be after traveling all over the place. We've got the international airport. We've got a great city, loads to do. Yeah. It's a blast.
Agreed. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
It's just cool to hear the stories, like behind all the different, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just, I don't know. I had no idea like how long you've been doing it, and kind of so it's really interesting to hear the progression, and obviously like this souped up fancy like pet hotel thing. It's cool for me to hear based on what I told you what I'm about to build out. Yeah. And so it's interesting just like when you dream about these ideas that are just a little out there, whether it's first mover or whether it's, you just trust a bunch of old experiences to kind of be like, no, this can be a thing. So it
can, and you can always change your mind. Yeah. Like, I think that's the other thing. Like, after I have to say, like, the sale of my first business was like a really destabilizing event maybe in my life, because it wasn't necessarily what I wanted at the time.
Yep.
But everything happens for a reason. And I feel like the one thing I've learned about my business, for example, is it's like modular comes to mind, but I'm like, let's be flexible. I want to be flexible. So for example, like if all of a sudden nobody could travel again, like COVID, like can my business pivot and allow for me to like shift how I'm using this square footage to, make revenue to keep the Kardashian alive, and so it turns really about trusting in your like instincts, being able to pivot. And sometimes if people like hyper specialize too much, that's sometimes what can like kind of get them into trouble, where it's like, well, yeah, I get it. 'Cause this isn't only appealing to like 5 people, right? Like if I opened the business and I only had 5 luxury suites, but I couldn't take, dogs that needed, the support of like a structured schedule and a condo, like we call them condos, but like, a more of an experience like what they have at home and that kind of routine, then like the business isn't going to be as financially viable. Right. So flexibility and the ability to like change your mind and workshop things. Like, I think that's where like the key is just being able to stay a little bit flexible and on your feet, and asking your clients, like, we do a lot of like, I had a lot of like, oh, I don't know. I don't want people to think that we're like, nickel and diming or adding things they don't want. And one of my employees was like, if they don't want it, they won't buy it. And I was like, okay, you're right. Like, let's do, and it's funny because you talk to people in my industry and like, even though you're like self-employed and I've been doing this for a long time, you see like every time you see like an unsubscribe, or something, and it's like, you're like, why don't you like me? Or like, why do you hate me? So we always joke, or like an employee will be like, oh yeah, we had so many cancellations. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like what happened? And then you go look and you're like, it was 5 out of like 8,000, like client, like, what are you talking about? It's like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to wear those on my sleeve. But it is, even though sometimes I have to remind myself like, who I am, kind of, where I'm like, it's okay, Hailey. Like sometimes they're just kicking the tires or whatever. You can't let those ones like get to you. But it is funny how it doesn't matter how long you've been in it. Those things still,
digs at you.
Yeah. Or the things that would have really got you worked up before. Like, man, this would have used to really, I was just having that conversation with a colleague where it's like, man, remember when this stuff used to just like, maybe an employee would resign or whatever. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is like the worst thing ever.
It's all falling apart.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but now it's like, no, we've been here before. It's okay. Or people will be like, you're so much more calm than I thought. It's like, because what's my option, man? We got to get this figured out. Like,
I've seen this before.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was during COVID. I mean, I brought the kids to work for a long time, for like a year after things started to open back up. Employees would be like, what's this like little kid slip we're doing here? Is this a dog toy? I was like, oh no, that's from like me and my kids lived here pretty much. Like I was lucky I had the suites because like they had all the employee offices were turned into their homeschooling rooms and they were like living in the suites. And the leftover wallpaper that I had from designing the suites I put in the kids' rooms because the kids came, they're like, these rooms are nicer than our rooms at home. And I'm like, well, I've got leftover wallpaper. So like one of my friends was like, sometimes when you post pictures, I can't tell if the kids are sleeping at work or at your house. And I was like, well, it's one and the same.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's a sim. The inside and the outside, the innies and the outies are all there.
So good.
Can't tell the difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
Oh, this one's like hard. I would say like, dreamers, but also I think for me, it's gritty. Like this city is so gritty. And I think that's what makes me really proud to be a Calgarian. I've watched this city kind of get shoved around and kicked around, since I've lived here. Yep. When I moved here, it was like booming. And it's like, you learn about the roaring 20s and stuff, but that's what it was like when I moved here. Right. Yep. And, then you watch the ebb and flow of the economy and, the oil market shift and, the pandemic shift and like trying to bring a new industry into the city. And I just feel like the people who are making the city like work and the people that are like sticking around to make it a continually like great place to live, it's grit. And I'm like super proud to live here and be part of it.
Amazing. Thanks again.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.